Welcome back and thank you for staying tuned. You're still watching Newspaper Review on High Impact Television. Kromale and I have taken a look at the stories making the rounds on the front pages of the dailies. Right now we have our guest in the person of Peniela, Barrister Peniela Akintujoye, a human rights lawyer, an activist, and a public affairs analyst who joins us via Zoom from Ibadan, Oyo State, Nigeria. Good morning, Peniela Akintujoye. Thank you for joining us on the Newspaper Review.
Thank you for having me.
Right, it's a delight to be here. Very quickly, let's delve straight into the business of today. Let's begin with the major conversation making the rounds on all the dailies, and I'm sure you're conversant with it, which has to do with the NLC protest. You know, despite the fact that the president had a national broadcast on Monday and rolled out measures put in place to mitigate the effect of the subsidy removal, the Lagos state government have also rolled out palliative plans amongst a number of things. Labour insisted that they are going to protest, and that protest kicked off today. Considering the fact that there was a court order that NLC, TUC should not go on a strike, and the federal government is saying their protest is illegal and they are going against court order. What do you make of all of this? Let's start from there.
All right, thank you very much. So let me start with the broadcast of the president vis-a-vis the decision of the NLC to go on strike, to go on the protest, what they call a national peaceful protest. Personally, the address of the president is a welcome development, but ab initio, the arguments from stakeholders had been that the approach of the federal government had not been the best from the word go. Ordinarily speaking, all of these plans to cushion the effect ought to have been rolled out, put in place before the policy takes effect. Now it is appearing like medicine after death. A lot of people are already gasping for breath. The poor actually is currently not breathing, you know, in the real sense of it. Even those that are established middle class are groaning under the weight of the economic pressure that is in the system. So now the address of the president is encouraging. However, you will notice that those that are members of the NLC, most of them are people that are workers. You know, some of them are workers, government workers. There are some that work with the private sector, no doubt. But some of the things that would have excited them, that would have touched them more directly in terms of this palliative, are yet not on the table. For example, the issue of the increment in the national minimum wage. That's one of their major, arguments. That is what will touch members of the NLC, for example, in a more direct way. If the national minimum wage is increased, but there are legal bottlenecks regarding the increment in their national minimum wage because it's a legal issue and there is a law that governs the implementation.
Are you there?
Okay. Of such a review. So can you hear me?
Yes,
very clearly.
We can hear you.
All right. So I was saying that the issue of the increment of the national minimum wage is a legal issue that cannot really be resolved within a few weeks, and it also borders on the capacity of the states to pay. So the states and other stakeholders need to be carried along, and discussions need to go for a little while before they're able to arrive at something that is acceptable to all stakeholders. The point I'm making is that the NLC is asking for something that is more immediate, that can assuage the pain in the immediate. Part of the projection is that before there could be conclusion of the national minimum wage, it could extend up to 2024, which is still many months away. And the argument is that with the poor that is already gasping for breath, would the poor not have died by that time?
Peniela,
if we have to wait until then.
Let me come in there. I recall that in the speech or the address the president made on Monday, he stated that the minimum wage is going to be reviewed immediately. Don't you think that that's something to hold on to, considering the fact that it came from the president?
I didn't think he said immediately.
He did.
He said it's going to be reviewed. There is no timeline yet. As to exactly when the review is going to be done. So, and the projection, because like I said, this is an issue of law. There's a National Minimum Wage Act, that talks about the procedure when you want to increase the minimum wage. So Labour knows that before.
Okay, I think we seem to be having a little challenge
with
the network,
with the internet.
with the internet there.
So
Yes.
Labour,
All right.
so Labour knows that the process is going to take some time. So Labour is asking for immediate intervention.
Okay.
Like a cash transfer. A particular intervention in cash to Nigerian workers. And the government has their data. They can do that. So I'm just saying that on the side of Labour, that is the reason why the address of the president, nevertheless, they are not satisfied. They are not satisfied with all that the president is trying to roll out, because none of these plans are able to make an immediate intervention,
right,
directly, that will affect directly the working class, which they represent. I mean,
right,
many of whom are even government workers.
Okay, thank you very much, Barrister Peniela, for that insightful, analysis about this issue. But notwithstanding the fact, fine, Labour has said that from the broadcast that Mr. President gave, all the plans that the government had or that it's trying to churn out, using that as a bait to assuage Labour from shutting down the country. Speaking to the Nigerian Labour Congress chairperson in Lagos State, said yesterday the reason why Labour is going to continue on strike is because all the plans are futuristic and none of them is immediate, like you said. But the government earlier brought out 8,000 naira as some of the palliatives that is going to give to more than 12 million Nigerians. The agitation from Labour and, of course, Nigerians who perceive that that particular amount of money is too small, insignificant, and will not do anything important in the life of the 12 million people, made the president to withdraw that. So now, in this new phase, there is no cash at the moment, which is the expectation of Labour. Do you think this is going to make Labour not sheath a sword for a long time?
Well, I think that it's in order for Labour to further pressurize the government. Of course, we can talk about the legal aspect. There's a pending court order. There are arguments back and forth as to the legality of this action. That on the government side, the government side believes that this is an industrial action in disguise. Even though on the Labour side, they're speaking through their counsel, Mr. Femi Falana, is claiming that this is just a peaceful protest, which is a constitutionally guaranteed right. But the arguments back and forth that a peaceful protest that will get workers from their desk, that will not make them to do their work and carry out their duties to their employer, that is the federal government, is already an industrial action. So, but the legality aspects are there, arguments back and forth. And I know that by the time they go back to court, the next day they have in court, this will be an issue for the lawyers to address the court, whether the Nigerian Labour Congress is in contempt of court or not. Okay. But from the political side, it is in order for the Labour Congress to pressurize the government to be more expedient. I mean, to do things more, in a more timely manner. All right. For instance,
sorry, I need to butt in here again, Barrister Peniela. I beg your pardon. Let me butt in here again. You just mentioned something very, very significant, that the expectation of Labour on the part of the government is to do something very, very significant. Now, in the president's broadcast, there was no reference to reviving Nigeria's ailing refineries. None of the 4 refineries. The president's broadcast did not refer or reference any of the refineries, and Labour on its part seemed not to be forthcoming or somewhat quiet in trying to push the government to make sure that the plan that it had in place before now, that by December 1 or 2 of our refiners will be working. If none of them are working, in spite of these palliative measures, do you think it's going to assuage the hardship that we are currently experiencing?
Oh, well, you see, if none of the refineries are working and the purchasing power of people increase, it would assuage it. There are 2 ways by which you can respond to an economic crisis. It's either your income increases or the cost reduces. If the refineries are brought into full operation, certainly it will reduce the cost. It will reduce the cost of the petroleum products. Now, but everybody, labor knows that the issue of repairing, revamping of the refineries has been going on for maybe more than 30 years. Government continue to push a lot of billions of dollars into it without we getting any result. So I guess that's the reason why they are not focusing on that now. Because, some other white elephant project is going to start another 8 years. President Buhari, for instance, vowed that before he leaves office, that the refineries will be working. And they have spent billions of dollars, maybe over $16 billion. On revamping. Nothing has happened. So that's probably why Labour is focusing on let the purchasing power of the people increase. If the purchasing power of the people increase through, for instance, wage increments, then regardless of the hike in price, they would be able to probably properly respond to it. And if that happens, certainly it is still going to, people are going to be able to breathe better. To keep using the popular cliche of Mr. President, the poor will be able to breathe better if their purchasing power increases despite the hike.
Peniella Akintojoye, before we move away from this particular headline, we know, going back to the track record of Labour, we've had cases where Labour comes out to talk about how they're not impressed by a certain decision or certain decisions by the federal government, embark on a protest, and after a while, maybe they go on a strike or strike for a few days, few weeks. We see that they meet with the federal government again and they come out to say, okay, the federal government and Labour had a conversation, but federal government has not met their demands, but they've spoken. So because of that, Labour have, called off their strike, and then after a while again we hear that Labour is coming out to say, oh, federal government did not meet our demands, we want to go on a strike again. And it has been like that. It's like a circle that has been going on and on. Do we see any difference in this situation? Do we see a case where this time around Labour will stand their ground, make sure that their demands are met, or do we see a case where they just probably have a conversation with the federal government, maybe federal government meets like 10 or 20% of their demands, and then they relax again, and then we see this again? What should we expect this time around from your projections?
Okay, well, usually the act of negotiation requires that both parties continue to shift ground. If one party completely holds to its gun, then negotiations are usually not going to succeed. Now, what I know, I remember the last time I was involved in direct labor, something that is labor-like negotiation, was when I was a student union leader in my university. And we want to get things from the university authorities. It is normal that the demand you are going to make, you will make it far-reaching so that you know that it will be negotiated. For instance, I know that NLC is asking for 300% increments in the current salaries of workers, which is not likely to be what they will conclude with. But they have deliberately gone high up so that by the time the negotiations go on, even if the government negotiated downward, it could probably get to a place that is satisfactory to both parties. So there is nothing worrisome about, for instance, after government has met some of the demands and they require that, the NLC should also shift its ground to give each other benefits of doubt, and then NLC momentarily calls the strike off, and then to watch whether government is going to fulfill its part of the bargain for a little while, and then comes back to the table. Sincerely, there is nothing strange about it. It's part of the act of negotiation. You have to continue to give yourself benefits of doubt, continue to shift ground, so that both parties can return the trust and respect that would allow the negotiation process to be productive on the long run. So, but I would expect that NLC is going to be more determined this time around to ensure that until they have gotten something significant, they are able to stick to their position, so that the people will not just suffer for nothing, so that even the destruction, because the strike is going to bring a lot of disruptions.
All right.
And the masses are going to also pay certain sacrifices. So let it be that NSC is determined to ensure that even though they don't get all their demands, because that usually never happens in any negotiation, but that something significant is gotten before the actions are called off.
All right, thank you very much, Barrister Peniella. Because of our time, notwithstanding, there are two issues I would like us to touch before we go. There are two issues, notwithstanding the short time, the period we have. First of all, I need you to consider the way and manner the Nigerian Senate is, screening the ministerial nominees. The emphasis I want to place on former governors Wike, former governor Malam Nasir El-Rufai, and David Umahi from Ebonyi State, and Jigawa State governor. I want you to just briefly touch on that. Then within the space of maybe a minute, we can look at in Niger, how Russia, Burkina Faso, and Mali is opposing ECOWAS decision. So let's talk about the ministerial screening. What's your observation?
Well, my observation is that the screening is not thorough. It's a lot. It's like a crony. It's like a crony system. It's what I call a paddy system. These are people that are going to be handling very critical government offices. They are going to be managing ministries, and we would have expected that they will be properly scrutinized, not just to say take a bow and go. It's not a question. It has nothing to do with the personal relationships of the lawmakers with the person in question. The lawmakers themselves are, holding a trust of Nigerians, more than 200 million Nigerians. So it has nothing to do with the personal relationship of the Senate president or any member of the parliament with any of the nominees, So, but what we are seeing now is very, very distasteful, because the track record of these nominees are not being really scrutinized. The question about whether they have corruption cases to their names, the public trust that they have held in the past, how they managed it, whether they did it well, whether they betrayed the trust of the public, all of these issues, and then their capability for the offices. Now, I still continue to find it very regretful and very sad that as we are presenting the nominees to the Senate, the portfolios they are going to be handling is not known. Because for me, if the portfolios they'll be handling is known, it will be better, it will be easier for the parliament to be able to put the right questions across to them. Not just that, they are not jacks of all trade. Every one of them have their areas of expertise. And what will really deliver results for the Nigerian people is if round pegs are put in round holes. That's really the issue. Not that somebody who has an expertise, for instance, in power is made to man the justice ministry, for example. If he's the best, if you put him in the wrong ministry, he's going to perform woefully. So that itself is another concern. Why is it that the president cannot already let it be known the portfolios, the ministries that each of these nominees are going to handle, so that they can be asked the right questions? But even for the general scrutiny, what we are seeing going on in the Senate is below expectation. It's very, very sad. It's very distasteful, and I hope that they can those that are left, I hope that they can have a different approach. That's not the way to screen people that are going to handle the destinies of 200 million people. To just say the bow and go. This man is a well-known man to us. It has nothing to do with you. Nigerians are watching.
All right.
Nigerians don't know them personally, and we want to know their capabilities.
All right. Thank you so much. I won't be able to entertain the next question about Niger, but I hopefully will bring you back soon so we can take a look at that, because we are restricted and constrained with time. Thank you so much, Barrister Peniela Akintojoye, for your time with us this morning on the Newspaper Review.
Such a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
You're very much welcome.